So you want to be a Flosstuber, or some other kind of craft YouTuber. You know what? Most of the tips kind of apply just the same. Or maybe you don't, and you just clicked on this video out of a vague interest in how that all works. Well, today, literally today, as this video goes out, is the 3rd anniversary of my channel. And I have picked up a surprising amount of knowledge in that time. So now I'm going to share it into your ears. I'm also going to close that blind because I feel like this is like way too light over here. Bear with. Carry on. Apparently, this sort of video is tradition now because last year for the 2-year anniversary, I did one all about the weird things you can expect once you have a craft channel. But I still get questions about the initial practical process for getting started, so let's just jump in. One thing I do just want to say first is I really struggled to outline what to put in this video. There's just so much. It is a huge topic. There are tips that apply only to classic show and tell videos, there are tips that only apply if you're doing tutorials, there are tips that are actually nothing to do with crafts at all specifically, but really important for you to know anyway. And there are tips that only really come in handy once you've been doing this for a while and you know you want to make a proper go of it. Not to mention, depending which platform you're publishing videos on, they probably have completely different rules. It's a lot of tips. So I'm going to be as brief as I can on each point, and do feel free to ask questions down in the comments if there's anything you feel like I didn't explain fully. Okay, disclaimer done. Let's start with the first thing that you absolutely need to get started: a plan. I remember from experience, it's so easy to get overwhelmed with all of the stuff you feel like you have to do right now. So take a deep breath and I'm going to let you into a secret. All you need to know up front are these 3 things. What kind of content do you want to make? What is the general vibe you are going for? And do you need any new equipment to get started? And the type of content might already be obvious to you. Maybe you already know that your heart lies with that typical show and tell and a bit of a chat format. Or maybe you're starting a channel to share a lifetime's worth of knowledge and you want to focus on tutorials. Maybe you fancy yourself as the next big craft vlogger. Only you know. For me, this question was always a bit more complicated and I wanted to try a bit of everything and see what stuck. So if that's you as well, honestly, don't worry about it. There's only one way to find out what you really like doing, and that is to try multiple things and see. Figure out what's fun for you to make versus what is actually a total slog, and go from there. If you know you want to focus on content that is around a specific topic each episode, for example, tutorials, then one more thing to add to your planning list is to brainstorm a list of potential content ideas and just stick them in a list somewhere. They don't need to be good, they definitely don't need to be well thought through. It's really just an exercise to make sure that you have some content ideas and you aren't going to run out after a month and start scrambling. One day in the distant future, when you are ill or massively unmotivated, that list is going to come in handy, believe me. As far as general vibes go, the question to ask yourself is, how do you want people to feel when they watch your videos? Again, this might be obvious to you, or it might take a lot more thinking about. Do you want people to feel educated, thoughtful, motivated, happy, angry, cozy? Most likely, your answer to this is going to be based on your own personality and the stuff that you already like watching. And you are never going to please everyone. Some people like really chill, relaxing videos. Some people prefer the exact opposite. So it makes sense to go with what comes naturally to you and just roll with it. Pick 3 of these feeling type words and you can use them going forward as a guide when you're making decisions, such as the name and brand of your channel, the look and feel of your videos, how you act on camera, and the subjects of your videos themselves. You are definitely not going to have all of this worked out from the very beginning, that's completely normal, but it just helps to have this in mind from the start so you know where you are eventually aiming for. For example then, you've decided on cozy as one of your words. Good call, it's very popular. Now, you're probably not going to call your channel Hype Stitcher 69 lol. You'll want to include things like warm colours, plants, maybe blankets in your backdrop. Maybe you always have a mug full of some hot drink with you, or a cute pet that likes to snooze next to you while you record. Any text will probably use a more friendly, rounded font. Any music will be pretty chill. And you'll tend to speak more softly and slowly and definitely wave your arms around less than, for example, me. For the record, I decided that I wanted people to come away from my videos feeling inspired, joyful, and seen. Hence the varied and hopefully encouraging content, the definitely very colourful backdrop, and just being open about my own quirks so that other people who share them don't feel so alone. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you think I usually pull all that off. Okay, so will you need to buy any new equipment? As frugal as I am, the answer to this might actually be yes, but it's probably not as much as you think. I am going to assume you own a computer, so if that's not true, I apologise. Some people do manage to record and edit on a mobile phone, but to be honest, it's going to be very limited and it's just not something I know much about. But assuming you do have a computer, you can find all of your essential software for free. A video editor is obviously going to be the main one. I use one called DaVinci Resolve, but there are a ton out there, so just try them out and see what works for you. It's also worth grabbing Audacity, again free software, which is great for improving your audio. Which is something you should do, but it's not actually that complicated, so don't at me, we'll get to it in a bit. And you'll really want some kind of image editor for making thumbnails as well. This is where a lot of people do genuinely find it easier to use a mobile app. I just use Photoshop because it's what I've always used and I'm used to. But you can also check out Canva, which is available on desktop and mobile, and again is available for free. So that's your software, that was easy enough, but you also need recording equipment. I am just going to say this once, for 90% at least of you watching this, your phone camera and mic is more than enough to get started. Probably way better than mine was, in fact. My camera was so trash. Remember, your raw footage and audio doesn't need to be stellar quality. There are so many easy tricks for improving it later, which we will go over in a bit. One very important tip though, if you are using your phone camera, just make sure you put the thing into airplane mode so nobody is ringing you halfway through trying to record. Lessons learned from bitter experience. One thing you really do want is a tripod or a phone holder of some kind. Yeah, you could muddle through propping things up on stacks of books, but honestly, these things are so cheap that even I would say it's worth investing in. And, that's about it. You do not need fancy lights, you do not need an expensive mic. As long as people can see and hear you mostly clearly, that's all you need to get started. Alright, planning complete. And you'll notice we haven't set any kind of schedule, we haven't talked about any kind of external marketing campaign, because those things just really do not matter until you've tried this out for a while and you decide to get a bit more serious. So let's set up your channel. You will need a channel name, which is often going to be the same name you're using on existing social media, but if you're not already part of the crafting community anywhere else, use those feeling words we talked about to come up with something with the right vibes. Don't worry about this too much though, you can always change this later, and it's the same with your handle. I actually just noticed this pronouns field while recording this. That must be relatively new. You'll also want a description for your channel. This is a good place to explain exactly who you are and what your videos are going to be. But again, you'll probably be tweaking it a lot, so don't worry too much right now. You can also add contact info such as other links and an email address. I would definitely recommend having a separate email for this purpose. It can get a bit spammy as your channel grows, and also you want to avoid doxing yourself and giving your actual personal email out to complete strangers. Finally then, a channel avatar and optionally a banner image. Again, maybe your avatar is just the same one you're using on social media for now, and the banner really isn't crucial, so you can just add that whenever you have time. Alright, so we have planned our channel, time to actually record. And here, finally, is where the tips get a bit more Flosstube specific. Let's imagine you're going with the most common type of content, the previously mentioned show and tell and a bit of a chat type format. Here are some things you'll want to bear in mind. Number 1, your viewers want to see and know everything about your project. They want to know pattern names and designers. They want to know what fabric you're using and where you got it from. They want to know yarn colorways, whatever it may be for the particular project you are talking about. So if you need to make notes for yourself ahead of time to remember all that, it's worth doing so. They also want to see the project both as a whole and close up. So if it's a really big project that you can't quite show off from where you're sitting, it's worth taking a photo of it separately and then you can just pop that up on screen. It means with cross-stitch specifically, you will want to take it out of the frame and iron it. I'm not the greatest at this, but I do try my best. And as you're talking about specific bits you've been working on recently, you want to hold those up nice and close to the camera so people can get a good close look. I've learned from experience that it's really easy to think you've been holding something up at the camera for a really long time, but in reality, in the final edit, it's been about 3 seconds and nobody's had a chance to really see what you're showing them. So just take your time with it, hold things up for a while, make any movements quite slowly, otherwise you can run into focus issues with your camera, general blurriness, and you can even make people feel a bit sick, which is probably not one of those 3 words you picked earlier. This need to hold things up to the camera also informs where you put the camera. You want to be able to get as close up as your camera can comfortably focus, so it makes sense to have it just over an arm's length away. Number 2 is directly related, which is respect your viewers' time. If you spend half of a video staring off into space trying to remember the name of a pattern, it's not the most interesting watch and it's not respecting your viewers' time. Same with any sections where you're not really saying or doing anything relevant. For example, maybe you've misplaced the next thing you want to show off, and so you spend 30 straight seconds rummaging around in a really loud plastic bag. Some of you are going to feel directly called out by that, but to be honest, we've all done it. And to be clear, I am not talking about purposeful silences for effect or musical interludes while you do something. I'm literally just talking about the parts that add nothing of value for anybody. I'm not going to sit here and tell you you need to get really big into advanced editing to be a Flosstuber, but just try your best to cut out the worst of the awkward silences, I beg you. Doing it manually? Yeah, it takes time, I'm not going to deny it. Nowadays, I use some software called Recut, which was a bit expensive, but totally worth it, and it does it almost instantaneously, which is great. But however you do it, this is honestly the biggest improvement that most Flosstubers I watch could make. It is of course possible that you genuinely can't afford either the time or the money to do this, in which case, fair enough. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to make videos, but just be aware that having these long silences is going to put people off your videos, it is going to affect your channel. And I'm not judging you for it, I'm genuinely not. But you just have to make that decision for yourself and accept the consequences of it. You can't have it both ways. That's probably one of the harshest things I've ever said on camera, but also it is true. Number 3 is to keep the non-crafting segments under control. I am definitely not great at this either, but I've been practicing and I've seen firsthand what difference it makes. First of all, people came to see your projects, so get into those projects ASAP. You do not need a long rambling intro that says nothing and goes nowhere. If the intro is serving a real purpose, like explaining something important or just setting the scene and easing into the vibe that you set as your goal at the start, that's a whole different thing. But ask yourself, is my intro actually doing that, or am I just wasting everybody's time, including my own? And life updates. Now, I love a good life update from the people I follow, but a lot of people aren't so keen on them. So having them at the beginning of your video is a really bad idea because a lot of people will click away at that point. Instead, put your life update towards the end so your superfans can keep watching, but everyone else at least made it through like 70% of your video before leaving, which looks much better from the algorithm point of view. Don't worry if you're on a platform without an algorithm, we're going to get to that. The same does go for big haul segments, by the way. They can be pretty divisive as well. One super low effort way to improve things for your viewers is to add video chapters. That way people can just skip those parts they hate instead of clicking away entirely in frustration. All you need to do is add the timestamps and the chapter titles in your video description, so check this very one for an example of how to do that. Okay, number 4 is definitely less Flosstube specific, but go with me because I cannot overstate its importance. Make sure your audio is decent. Seriously, this is the biggest kiss of death, and I see so many Flosstubers make the same mistakes. I nag because I care. If you only have the smallest amount of editing time and you can only put it into one thing, make it the audio. One problem that I'm sure you've noticed as well is there can be a massive variation in speaking volume from one video to another. You're constantly having to adjust as a viewer, and on one video you'll need to have your speakers at 100% just to be able to hear what the person is saying, or need to have your ears blasted off when the next video starts. It's not ideal. The other common problem is that a video will have a very low speaking volume, but then a sudden deafening musical interlude, which, don't be that person, it is the worst. Luckily, these problems are easy to fix, so there's no excuse. In your video editor, you will somewhere be able to see your audio levels. Here's what that looks like in DaVinci Resolve. What I did was load up a few well-made videos from bigger channels that I watch, and I basically flitted between those videos in my browser and mine in the editor, and adjusted my own speaking volume until it roughly matched what I was hearing from others. I took note of what level that was in the little graph here. You can see I'm basically at the top of the yellow range there, and also made a note of what settings I'd used to achieve that. Took me about 10 minutes as a one-time task, and now I've been using the exact same settings for about 2 years, and I know I'm at least in the ballpark of a correct volume. Once your voice is sorted, then you can worry about music and sound effects. Red is always bad, avoid that in general. You want musical interludes to be a bit quieter than your speaking was, but if it's music that plays in the background while you're speaking, then you want it to be very quiet so people can still hear you clearly. Test it with speakers, test it with headphones, and just make sure you are always audible above any music you have playing. And there are plenty of other audio things that may or may not be relevant to you. For example, if your mic picks up a lot of background noise, you can use the noise removal filter in Audacity. Remember, that is free. Makes a huge difference. I run that on everything I record because my mic has kind of a quiet background hiss that just gets really annoying after a while. Maybe your recording environment is a bit echoey. Well, you could spend hundreds on acoustic wall panels, or again, you could just experiment a bit with the filters in Audacity and find something that works for your space. These things do take a bit of time and experimentation at the start, but it's so worth it to just be able to use the same settings from one video to the next and know it's going to sound good. Number 5 is put yourself out there and be a part of the community. You might think making a video and putting it up on the internet is about as out there as you can get. But no. Have you told your friends and family about it? Have you even posted it on your social media? It can be surprisingly scary. I remember it took about a week after my very first video went up before I even dared mention it on Instagram, even though my Instagram cross-stitch friends were the ones who inspired me to do it in the first place, and I knew they would be nice. But the more you do it, the less awkward it's going to feel, and getting those first few viewers in, even if they're just people you know in real life, really does wonders for the old motivation levels. Watch and comment on other people's videos, not just because it's good to learn what works and what doesn't, but just because it's fun to get to know them. Give a shout out to a channel you enjoyed watching lately, not because you think they might reciprocate and do the same for you, but just because you like their channel and you think they deserve people watching them. Be genuine in your connections, and yes, you probably will see some advantages come your way. But more importantly, you build a supportive network of like-minded people in the same boat facing the same challenges, and that can be incredibly useful as well as incredibly fun. So this leads us on to the growth phase. We've planned our goals, we've practiced telling people about our projects and holding things up to the camera for long enough, and we've sorted out our audio, right? But maybe our channel still isn't growing. Why might that be? This is the part where you have a choice to make and I can't help you with it. Is your channel just a hobby for sharing stuff with friends, or do you want to take it seriously? And be honest with yourself, because if it genuinely just is a hobby and you enjoy just having somewhere to show off your projects to your few besties, then the stats aren't going to matter to you at all. But if you tell yourself it's just that little hobby channel, while secretly harbouring visions of something much more, then you are going to run into serious frustrations. Let's say then you have decided you're aiming for growth, and maybe even a decent income. It's nothing to be ashamed about, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But here are some things you'll want to think about. To gain subscribers, you want to be making content that people want to subscribe to. That's step 1. And then, only then, you want to attract more eyeballs to that content. That sounds pretty simple, and honestly it kind of is, but it can also be the dreaded W word. Work. The best way to encourage subscriptions is to focus on the value of your actual content. So for example, if you're making tutorials, are they good tutorials? Are they concise and to the point? Are they clear and well explained? Are they answering questions that people are searching for the answers to? That last part is so important, especially in the early stages of a tutorial style channel. A good example is my very early cross-stitch design video, which I had researched the keywords for, and it gave me a great boost early on in my channel. So learn how to check what people are searching for. There are tons of tutorials on this on the internet because it's changing all the time. And then answer the questions they are asking. Another kind of value is in doing something that your audience either can't or won't do themselves. For example, this video saw me sitting and going through the same steps over and over again with every free conversion tool I could find for like 2 weeks. How many other people are able and willing to put in that kind of time and focus? Well, a lot of them were happy to have me do it instead, put it that way. But let's bring it back to our classic craft show and tell example. What's the value there, you might be asking? This is where those words you chose at the start really come into their own. These types of videos, as well as vlogs, stitch with me's, etc., are less about a specific topic and more about you the creator and how your video makes them feel. So you really want to lean into those goals you set in the planning phase and make sure you are setting the right vibe. If your videos can consistently make people feel relaxed and cozy and at peace, to go back to that earlier example, they will watch no matter what you are talking about because they're just there for you and that experience that you are giving them. Now, despite those couple of examples I peppered in there, the whole question of value is actually a big problem for my channel, because of course I make a lot of different kinds of content and also on different crafts. Someone who subscribes from a cross-stitch tutorial is less likely to watch a cross-stitch vlog, and way less likely to watch something knitting related. They might even unsubscribe altogether if they see too much variety. But this is what I meant earlier about not having it both ways. I made the decision to have this varied content because it's what I wanted to do. But I educated myself enough on the subject to know it would hold my channel back. I get very few views on most videos for the amount of subscribers I have, and as for those subscribers, yeah, they grow consistently, but it doesn't really accelerate, it just kind of stays steady. I had to choose between varied content and faster growth, and I chose the former for all kinds of reasons specific to me and the type of person I thought might watch. But I was honest with myself about my goals, so the low views genuinely don't bother me. I wanted people to feel inspired, joyful, and seen, so if somebody does, I'm happy. I keep hitting you over the head with it, but yeah, just be honest about what you want the channel to be, otherwise you can't effectively work towards it. So now your videos are a little more valuable content-wise, it's worth thinking about making them and your channel as a whole look a bit more professional and polished. You want your channel to seem real and stable and like it's not just gonna disappear tomorrow, like it's worth subscribing to. This could be something as simple as working on your backdrop, again refer to those 3 words from earlier. But it could also mean learning some better post-processing or graphical skills. This one has previously been top secret between me and the Stitch Squad, but what the hell, let's go for it. This is what my raw footage looks like. That's not the joyful vibe I'm going for. I must need more expensive lights. No. I spent about half an hour learning how to set up a custom LUT in DaVinci Resolve, which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically like an Instagram filter, and now I just apply it to each video with a couple of clicks. Magic, eh? Look at your thumbnails. Compare them to people doing well in the niche or the type of vibe that you're trying to hit. I'd be willing to bet a lot of those big channels do very similar things with their thumbnails. For example, we mentioned earlier that cozy channels are going to use friendly rounded fonts and probably quite warm colours. And you might be thinking it pays to be different and stand out, but it does not. Having those recognisable elements tells a prospective viewer exactly what kind of video thumbnail they're looking at and whether they're likely to enjoy it. I watch so many cozy but also a bit chaotic artist vlogs, like so many, it's ridiculous. But anytime a new channel is recommended to me, I know if it has that typical thumbnail style, it's probably something I'm going to be at least a bit interested in, and it is probably going to get a click. Again, this is something that I'm personally terrible at. One of my big goals is to start putting more time into my thumbnails, because I know enough about it, but I just don't take the time to do it. That said, they're colourful and they make me smile, so you know, that's an okay place to start. Although I hate to say this, yes, you might want to start thinking about upgrading equipment. Only, and I mean only, when you have been doing this for a while and you know this video lark is for you and you know that your current tools are holding you back. It was easy for me to be certain because my old camera literally couldn't even focus on things, which that was a terrible experience for my viewers, but it was also terrible for me because it took so long to try and edit out the worst of the wobble. I did get my first 500 subscribers that way though, which just goes to show people are willing to look past quite a lot as long as your audio is okay. If I say it enough times, maybe you'll start believing me. After my experience with the phone camera, I chose my current one, which is the Sony ZV-1, because I knew it had great autofocus and I would be able to just basically leave everything on automatic and it would deal with it for me. If you've realised you like making videos where, say, you move around a lot or you're in noisy environments, you might want to look into a lavalier mic that you can wear. Really, this whole question of equipment is just going to depend on what your problem areas are. One last thing to think about then is how you are coming across on camera or even on voiceover. Do you sound natural or do you maybe sound a bit nervous or quite robotic? I was definitely both of those things at the start, so don't worry, it's a totally normal phase to go through. You might be surprised to hear how much resistance I feel to frogging these old projects. Most people with a bit of practice do naturally start to sound more natural, for want of a better phrase. But if it's a problem for you, there are a couple of things you can try to speed up that process. First is just practicing. Talk to yourself in the mirror. It's gonna feel ridiculous, but talking to a camera also feels ridiculous, and that's the problem we're trying to solve. So tell your reflection about that cool new full coverage you just started until it stops being embarrassing at all. If you write scripts for your videos, Get used to writing in the same style that you talk. It's no good writing an overly formal and grammatically perfect script if that's just not how you sound in real life. It'll take way more concentration for you to read and you will just sound wrong. Talk to your camera as if you're talking to just one friend, or maybe your favourite regular commenter. Someone you feel comfortable with. Smile and laugh normally as you would if you were talking to them in real life. If you're a big hand talker, just go with it because concentrating on sitting still is just going to distract from what you're trying to say. You'll notice I often look off to the side because, as some of you know, I have a real problem with eye contact, and that's what I do in real life as well, even with my closest lifelong friends. I'd rather be able to do that and deliver my sentence as I intended rather than have to record multiple takes just to get one where I'm looking at the camera. And the big secret is that you should do all of this stuff even if you are only recording a voiceover. The difference between a voice just reading from a script versus one explaining something in real life to a friend is massive. It's why if you've ever worked in a customer service call centre, they probably told you to smile on the phone. People can genuinely hear it. To wrap up the growth section then, all of these things work in terms of YouTube's algorithm. Valuable content gets better watch time and engagement metrics. Good thumbnails that really hit your niche are going to get better click-through rates. So your video gets shown to more people. But say you just aren't interested in what the algorithm thinks of you, or maybe you're on another platform altogether. Hi PeerTube, where this algorithm doesn't exist. Implementing and practicing all of this stuff is still helpful. Valuable content that is well made and a pleasure to watch is also what the viewers want too. At this point you can start worrying about things like external marketing and all that stuff if you want, but that's out of scope for this video, and also I basically never do it, so I'm not the best person to teach. Mostly I just focus on making the types of videos I would want to watch, and it seems like that's worked pretty well for my modest goals so far. Okay, that was a lot. I hope it was in fact valuable content to some of you and at least vaguely interesting to the rest. Thank you, as always, to my members over on Ko-fi for your support in keeping the channel going. It's been almost a year since I introduced the memberships and I can't tell you how much that has helped me out, although I do keep trying. And of course, a shout out to the Stitch Squad, who were already only too aware of what my uncolour graded videos look like. Mary Ann Johnson, Sunny, Candy Riley Pettinger, Laura Sellerts, Enlightened Flamingo, Cross Stitch the Globe, I'd Rather Be Stitching, Angela Sue Harrison, Emily Hobbs, Maria Midnight Crafting, Lee the Cozy Crafter, and Asta Vinka. I'll be back soon with, if all goes to plan, a bumper edition Crafter's Log. So in the meantime, have a brilliant rest of your day and keep making cool stuff. Bye!